Good evening, everyone. Calling to order the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting. We'll start with the roll call.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Roll call. Katie Parker. Here. James Brightly.
Present.
Jay Jones.
Here.
Jaylene. Here. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is, are there no minutes to approve? No, okay. Okay. There was no old business. Oh, and any oral communications? I don't see anyone in the audience.
And we don't have any requests by phone.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Let's move on now to new business, orientation and Brown Act training. Carrie, I
Very
believe
good.
it's you.
Welcome, everybody. I am up here. I'm Stephen Parker, acting city manager. And Carrie and I have a presentation to provide you some information just about the functioning of the city and then some Brown Act training. Carrie, are you able to screen share? Thank you. So this is something that we're providing to all committees, many of whom recently have new committee members on them. And as your committee was recently formed, that qualifies. So just want to share a little bit about how the city runs. There we go. So the city's form of government is similar here in Upland as it is to most cities in the state. It's called a council manager form of government, and it takes elected officials establishing the policy for the city, but they appoint a city manager who's over the staff of the city who handles the day-to-day activities. The city of Upland is separated into 4 departments. I think you'll find most cities have a lot more departments than ours, but we've had some streamlining that's occurred in the past, and so we're at 4. Administrative Services Department is headed by myself, and when I go back to my old role of Assistant City Manager, I'll be over the Administrative Services Department, which consists of the divisions of Finance, Human Resources, and Risk Management, IT, Recreation and Community Services, the City Clerk, and a couple of contracts, our library contract and our animal shelter contract. The Development Services Department is headed up by Robert Dahlquist. He goes by Bob. And he's over the housing, and all economic development, and then building and planning. Those are the services that are handled in the development services area. The police department, headed up by Chief Darren Goodman, handles all the things that you would think of as it relates to police and all their activity in the city, and also animal control and code enforcement. On animal control, that's the field services aspect of it. And our Public Works Department, headed up by Braden Yu, who's right in front of you. It handles all facilities, operations. Maybe the most important aspect is all the utilities, so water, sewer, solid waste in the city, as well as engineering and day-to-day activities for roads and park maintenance and the like. So the city of Upland has established a series of boards and committees that provide an opportunity for residents to be able to provide input to city council. Some of those are boards where city council is on the boards, and some of them are just made up of residents in an advisory capacity, as is yours. The recommendations from those boards will go to city council, who will make the final decisions on anything. But they do take the recommendation from their committees seriously. And the responsibility for committee members is to make those recommendations, give advice to staff, but it's staff's consideration for providing that information to city council after determining information that they might have in their own professional area, in addition to the consideration of what comes before the committee. And your staff liaison, you have a couple of staff liaisons in front of you today, but because the city manager is over all staff of the city, and the opportunity for you is to work closely with the staff liaison, who then will provide that information up to the city manager to make recommendations that will ultimately go to city council. But requests for information, support, questions that you have should be directed to your staff liaison. And here's a listing of the different boards and committees that have been established here in Upland. The legislative ones on the left have two city council members on them. And the advisory ones on the right have no city council members. Those advisory ones each have 5, not each, I see Parks has 10, but most of them have 5 advisory members, one appointed by each member of our city council. And on the legislative side, 3 of those also have 5 advisory members. And there's a couple there at the bottom that meet on an as-needed basis, don't meet frequently, and the rest have regularly scheduled meetings, mostly quarterly. Oh my goodness, I did it. I'm getting faster and faster at this. So with this, I'll hand it over to our city clerk.
Thanks, Stephen. So today we're going to cover a broad overview of the Brown Act. There's a lot more detail and a lot more rules. So if you ever have any questions during your term, please feel free to reach out to the city clerk's office. We'd be happy to answer your questions at any time. So first, we'll start with the history of the Brown Act. In 1952, a journalist named Michael Harris wrote a series of articles for the San Francisco Chronicle titled "Your Secret Government." And it detailed how boards, commissions, and local agencies were having meetings behind closed doors without the public having the opportunity to participate and give input. And although this was illegal at the time, the legislature decided that the law needed to be made more clear. So Ralph M. Brown authored the Brown Act, and in 1953, it was signed into law. Since that time, there's been many amendments to it. One of the most recent ones addresses social media, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So the basic premise of the Brown Act is that all meetings of a legislative body of a local agency need to be open and public. This applies to the elected city council as well as all of the advisory boards under the city. So which leads us to the 3 major principles, which is notice to the public, an opportunity for the public to be heard, and transparency in decision making. So a key concept in the Brown Act is a quorum, or majority of the members meeting. And anytime that a majority of members meet at a designated time and place, it's considered an official meeting, and those need to be properly noticed. There are exceptions to this, and that includes conferences, community meetings, meetings of other legislative bodies, and social or ceremonial events. So if there's ceremonial events in the city, and the entire Environmental Sustainability Board attends, it's not an issue. You just want to be mindful that during those times, you don't all gather and talk about anything that's related to the subject matter of your committee. There are times that a meeting can happen without the majority of members meeting at the same time and place. And these are serial meetings that you need to be aware of. One type is a daisy chain, and that's when one member would contact another member to discuss something under your subject matter jurisdiction. And then that member contacts another until a majority of the members have now discussed some topic that will come before the committee. Another type of this is the hub and spoke. And that's where you have one member contacts all the members to kind of get their take on something. This is also not allowed under the Brown Act and considered a serial meeting. And this can happen in email, phone calls, and social media. So you always want to be mindful of that. When staff contacts you, you'll be in blind carbon copy on an email, and that's just to prevent you guys from replying all and inadvertently discussing something with everybody, and that's just to protect you. And then, like I mentioned, the Brown Act recently addressed social media, and up until this time, it really wasn't addressed, but it's become more prevalent, and so they felt a need to make it clear. And the new regulations for social media include even clicking like on another member's comment about something that's under your subject matter jurisdiction would be a violation of the Brown Act. And for that reason, you want to be very cautious about communicating on social media with other members. It's not to say that you can't friend other members or follow other members, but you don't want to stay away from anything that's related to your subject matter jurisdiction. So there's noticing requirements associated with the Brown Act. And this is intended to make sure that the public does have an opportunity not only to know where and when the meeting is, but also to understand what's going to be discussed. So if it's something that they have an interest in, they have the opportunity to attend and make comments. Another part of that is that the public comment has to be before any decisions are made. So you notice on all of our agendas, from City Council to every advisory committee, oral communications is first on the agenda to give the public an opportunity to speak before there's any decisions that are made. And the noticing requirements is 72 hours in advance for regular meetings and 24 hours in advance for a special meeting. So let's talk a little bit about violations of the Brown Act. If you feel at any time that there's been a violation of the Brown Act, you should contact my office or your staff liaison. And it may be that we can tell you that it wasn't a violation and explain the process, or if there was a violation, it's the responsibility of the agency to cure and correct that. And that might mean that if something wasn't properly noticed on the agenda, that the committee won't discuss it at that meeting. We'll have to delay it for another meeting or a special meeting. Or if it was discussed and we find out after the fact, the appropriate action would be to properly agendize that item and bring it forward for discussion again and give the opportunity for the public to participate. And if there were any decisions made, rescind those decisions and then have the discussion again. But there is a provision for prosecution for violations of the Brown Act. Those are very rare, and you have to show that there was intentional non-compliance, and it's very rare that that happens. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the roles and responsibilities of the members. So it's the responsibility of every committee member to attend all the meetings if possible. And if not, we ask that you do let your staff liaison know as soon as possible, because if we don't have a quorum of members, we would have to cancel the meeting. So it's important that you attend if possible, and if not, let your staff liaison know. And also to read the materials beforehand, be prepared, and to be respectful of all the other members and the public. And then the chair has a few more responsibilities. They preside over the meeting. It's their responsibility to ensure that members of the public have the opportunity to speak, to keep the discussions orderly and focused, and kind of move through things in an orderly manner, and also ensure that all of the members get the opportunity to be heard. So with that finishes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions? All right, then I will turn it back over to the chair to move on.
Carrie, we do have a question.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I just have an easy question. Meeting times, are they quarterly and are they like the third Wednesday of that quarter? So we can get it on.
The-
our calendars.
The Environmental Sustainability Committee is, let me see, you guys meet the third Wednesday of the month, quarterly at 5 p.m. I did send out initially a list of the next, I think the next 3 or 4 meetings that were coming up. But you'll notice on your agenda that it adjourns to the next regularly scheduled meeting. So you'll have that date at the end of each meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I don't see any more questions, Carrie. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Moving on, next on the agenda is item 5B, presentation of the Residential Organic Waste Collection Outreach Program by Michael Aragon, Vice President of Burtech Waste Industries.
Actually, it's going to be by staff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to share the screen. Okay, so today we're going to be presenting, oops, let me minimize the, technology is great. Okay. So today we're going to go over the Residential Organic Waste Collections Outreach Program. Michelle Madrid, our management analyst, as well as myself, Braden Yu, will be making this presentation. I just want to be sure that you guys know that this is an interactive presentation. So whenever you have questions, please let us know. Be happy to interrupt us. We'd be happy to talk about whatever you would like to add to the conversation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and it's going to be a back and forth. So hold on for a second.
Thank you, Braden. So our first slide will be covering the Cal Recycle, why we're doing this. So Cal Recycle SB 1383 requires cities to conduct education and outreach of organic recycling food waste to all its residents, businesses, and local food banks and recovery organizations. Our second slide will be Braden.
So we're going back and forth. It makes it fun. Now, I wanted to bring to everyone's attention what our plan is. I think we discussed it last time. We had options to go to a 4-barrel system versus a 3-barrel system. And a question was brought up to us, to staff about this, that there was a feeling that a 4-barrel system would be more effective to administer a program and make it more successful. And so, one, we wanted to go over the benefits of it and kind of discuss a little bit about how our outreach can make that effect. And I guess the best example is when seatbelts were first enacted in the system, even though the seatbelts were there, many people did not take it very seriously and did not utilize it. You know, we had a lot of outreach programs community-wide, but I think the most effective thing that came about change in our social aspects of utilizing seatbelts was when they said, you don't have a seatbelt on, you get written up by a ticket. Unfortunately, that's sometimes how we get more compliance. And nowadays, it has become a cultural thing that we can't imagine not having our seatbelt on. I think when we see someone like Britney Spears ride around without the seatbelt, we're shocked by that. And that's how we initiate cultural change, right? By slowly getting it into our minds of what we need to do in the future and making it part of our lives. So I think whatever program we decide to go in, we can make it successful over time. It's not going to be something easy. But again, why we are going from a 3-barrel system to a 4-barrel system is really logistics. We do know that by adding a 4th barrel, we would have to add a 4th truck route within the community. There's several benefits to having it. By having a more standardized barrel, it makes people think, I need to recycle, right? But we also have challenges because we add another truck. Most trucks are fairly heavy and have big impacts to our roadways, not only to the roadways, but to the pollution within our area. Adding a 4th bin, we also add space within the parking lots. And in some communities, it's not a problem where there's plenty of places to put trash bins, but in many residential or high-density communities, this becomes a problem where parking is a premium, and adding another barrel becomes problematic for the community. So we've taken those things in consideration, and also we've talked to many other haulers, not just, well, I wouldn't say many other haulers, we talked to another hauler, Valley Vista, and they said that they were going into the 3-barrel system. So regionally, because of many of these factors, many of the haulers are going in this direction and it's starting to become more of a standard. I'm not saying that this is ultimately going to be what it's going to be. When we're working on our ordinance for organics recycling, we put it in so we have an option to go back to a 4th barrel if we so choose. But I think at this particular time, weighing the pluses and minuses of the program, we think that it's more beneficial to be on a 3-barrel system rather than to be on a 4th barrel system, and banking on our outreach programs to really get that cultural change. But I'm happy to take any questions because I know this was a question that was brought up, and does anybody want to comment on this?
So is the 3-barrel system still going to be where they have to segregate out their food waste from the green waste?
Well, the 3-barrel systems was supposed to be set up where everyone puts their food waste in a bag, and then the bag goes into the bin. At the transfer station, Burtech will be grabbing those bags and separating it, yes. So that is true. They don't want to have a mixed contamination from the green waste as much as possible because they want to be able to mulch a good portion of that green waste.
So do they have any, because the last meeting you had mentioned that their trial city that did that only had about a 10% participation rate in actually segregating their food out into those bags. Have they seen any other success in other cities that shows that this could be something that would be successful and we're not just going to end up having to revamp this later?
Sure. I'll probably let Mike Aragon speak to this but I would say that like any emerging program, there's always going to take time to get compliance to it. So we do have an understanding that it was going to be a very low adoption rate initially, and that we have about 2 years to really get it right before we enact penalties to really hammer home the message of getting organic recycling through the community. But let me get Mike to be able to speak to that.
I can get a microphone, so that's pretty good. Thank you, Braden. Once again, Mike Aragon, Vice President with Burtech Waste Industries. And yes, we had 3 pilot programs, the cities of Rialto, Fontana, and Rancho Cucamonga. Each program had a little over 1,000 participants. We went through an extensive notification process and to encourage participation. 2 of the cities, we provided a container similar to the one that Michelle has on the table here. The city of Rancho Cucamonga chose to just inform their residents and tell them, put the material in a bag and then tie your bag off and put it into the green waste container. But surprisingly, the results that have been going on for a better part of 6 months or more are about the same in all 3 communities. We do not have a high level of participation right now because there are many of the residents, since it isn't a citywide program, they just are ignoring what needs to be done. And as Braden mentioned, once we go full city, then it is going to be a series of community meetings and education prior to their receiving, if the city decides to distribute, these pails are designed to go under your sink. It's aligned with like a 2-gallon plastic bag, and you would empty it daily or every other day, tie it off and put it into your green waste barrel. But with all our programs, when we kicked off 939 back in the late 80s, it took actually several years to really get on board with that recycling program. But now, it's as Braden said with regard to the seatbelts, it's second nature. When we added green waste, that took a little time, and now we have a very good green waste collection program. So we see this taking a little time, but with the right education, with the right information, and continual information going towards all of these individuals, as well as our updates, community meetings, speaking at council meetings, and whatnot. We hope to bring this to the forefront so that we do get that participation. But to answer your question, the participation has been rather low. But for those that are participating, we're estimating an average of 5 to 7 pounds per household per week, which is right where you want to be on something like this. When we have to take that amount and then divide it out by the entire pilot group, it really minimizes to the point that our average weight per household was 5 ounces. And but that's taking into consideration all those people that aren't participating. So we have our work cut out for us, both Burtec and the city, with regard to outreach efforts and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it is law. It's state law. There are a variety of requirements that Cal Recycle has imposed on every community, and we're going to have to work to keep those numbers up.
I have a question, actually. So in doing this process of bagging up the food items like this, where would that leave items like soiled pizza boxes and things like that I know other cities are composting in this type of program because that is considered a compostable item?
Mm-hmm.
But if we're limiting it to a small bag, you can't fit like a pizza box in there. So that means
Right.
we're still going to have to trash things like that.
We're actually taking more and more of that material out of our Blue Barrel. And so what we ask, if you want to you can put the soiled pizza box in your Blue Barrel. Just don't leave a big glob of cheese on it or something. Scrape it off. If it has an oil stain on it or cheese stain, that's fine. But because a lot of the compostable paper and cardboard will also be a part of this program. So you can do that, but you could utilize your Blue Barrel for that, and that would be probably your best way.
Katie?
So it's a pilot program in each city with 1,000 people. I was just curious how you picked the 1,000 people that were going to participate in that program. Was it random?
Yeah, great question. We looked at and we worked with each city as far as I left it up to the city to what segment of the city. Every city has very active residents and some residents that aren't so active. So they picked the location, and then we tied it to one of our routes. Our routes are all about 1,000 to 1,100 homes per route. So that's how they aren't just random people, they are all on a complete route.
I was just curious, like in Rancho, did they pick the most active areas, or did they?
No, it's actually kind of a middle. I live in Rancho myself. It's kind of middle of the road. Fontana, again, they had originally targeted, I don't know how familiar you are with Fontana, but up in the Hunters Ridge area. And I said, well, I get really good participation from all of our residents up in Hunters Ridge. But I have an area of South Ridge in the south end of the city that I have a few problems with, and there's language barriers, this, that, and the other. So we did a bilingual approach, but we did something a little more mid-city, and that was discussed with the city, and the same process went forward with Rialto.
Just a programmatic thing. If you can speak closer to the mic, because the broadcast is not picking that up as well. So if you can try to do that, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Mike, I had a question.
Yes, sir.
For those who participated, what was the quality of what they disposed of?
Great question. That's the beauty of this, because every one of those bags had great stuff in it. It wasn't contaminated, because in a pilot program, you either choose to participate and you want to participate correctly. And so that's what we were seeing. When we kind of force it on someone and say, well, you got to do this, sometimes that will lend to more contamination, untied bags, they just throw it or whatever. So we're going to have to monitor that. Part of, as you know, James, part of 1383 requires route audits on the street, where we're not going to do the checking on the street. We're actually going to be exchanging barrels. But we literally have to go look and make sure that they are abiding by the rules. And believe me, if someone was parked in front of my house and start going through my trash, I wouldn't be too happy. So our process, and we've submitted this to Cal Recycle, and they say that's a good approach, is that we'll be exchanging barrels, bringing barrels back to the MRF. Those barrels will actually be identified by address. There'll be an address sticker on there, so that we know who's playing and who's not, and who's contaminating. Because it's very important that we don't have a few, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, although it sounds like it, a few bad apples, although we could use the bad apples, ruining it for everyone who's doing the job. And contamination is a big problem for us. So we want to keep it as clean as possible. Put your bad apples in there as well as your leftover lasagna and old fruit and vegetables, table scraps, and all that.
Were there any of the materials of the participants? Were any of the units multifamily by any chance, or were they all just residential homes?
They're all residential at this time, and as you know, multifamily is going to present a whole different set of problems, or challenges, I should say, not necessarily problems. So our goal is to put a program together to have the residential program take off. We have a program for multifamily. We don't have a lot of high hopes right now, because I get so much contamination even in my recycling containers for multifamily. But multifamily locations will receive a combination of bins and barrels, as you can see in the picture there, depending on the size, or their enclosures. Sometimes they can't fit. They might have a gray bin and they may have a blue bin, but they can't put in a green or a brown bin, so then we'll use barrels so that they're within the enclosure. That is a lot to do with city regulations about not having exposed containers out there. So we are dealing with space considerations, and we have some commercial locations or multifamily locations that their enclosures were built years ago and designed for a trash bin. Right. And now we have multiple bins that you could literally at one location see every one of those bins at one location, and probably multiple gray bins. That's what 1383 has done. They dictate not only those are the colors we have to use. Now, fortunately, most of those we use already, but those are the colors we have to use per commodity. The gray is for trash, the blue is for recycling, green obviously for green waste, and the tan or brown is for food waste. That will be a challenge with multifamily.
Yeah, I have a few questions. So in the 4-barrel option, which I know we're not considering at this time, you look at the size of that bin and you think 5 to 7 pounds per week. That just seems not.
Right. If on that one in particular, if
Yeah.
the city, and I have the city of Barstow, for example, they don't have green waste up there. So they are going to have to add a food waste barrel. Mm-hmm. Food waste barrel is a 35-gallon barrel, much smaller.
Yeah.
Those are all 65s or 95s that they're showing you there. But the food waste barrel is smaller. They are choosing to go with a smaller organics barrel, which means it will be a green barrel, mm-hmm. but will accept both bagged food waste and green. But it will still be much smaller because they don't have much in either of those two commodities. Right. If Upland were to go down that path, my recommendation would be a 35-gallon food. It would be impractical to have such a big container. And even at that, we would still ask that residents bag their food, just from a standpoint of collection and moisture and dripping out the back of a truck. The more bagged material, the better.
So I have two other questions. One is, how is this processed once you get it to your facility, the food waste?
So the truck, from a collection standpoint, and why we recommend the 3-barrel, you'll see no difference and no extra collection costs because it's in a barrel that we're already picking up. He'll pick up his route and he'll go to our MRF. He drops his mixed waste or mixed organics load on our tipping floor. This will be actually an outside cement slab. And even though all of our facilities now have probably state-of-the-art separating equipment, we use robotics, we use air knives, we use various magnets and air blowers for separating material. This is going to go back to the old-fashioned good pair of eyes and a good pair of hands. And they'll literally have to fish out these bags from a green waste load. So they'll identify it. Whoops, I'm sorry, they'll identify the bags, and they go in a special bin. And then that bin will be the forklift will come over, take that bin, and go to a spot in our facility where they'll run it through a debagger. We'll be able to separate the bag from the food waste. And now I have this big bin of food waste. I'm going to take a portion of that food waste, and it goes through an anaerobic digestion process. The other portion will be used as part of our recipe for compost. The AD material will be slurried, and then it's taken to a anaerobic digester, a facility where it's put in these huge tanks. There's microbes in there that eat all of the material up in a anaerobic environment, and they produce a methane gas. That methane gas is scrubbed, and it can be used in a number of ways. Most notably, they take that gas and they run huge generators that create electricity and go back into the grid. There are other operations that scrub the gas. When I say scrub it, it's a way of filtering and cleaning the gas. And they use it to fuel trash trucks and whatnot at their facility. And then excess gas is actually made available to pump right back into your natural gas line. It's the same material that when you turn your oven on or your stove on, that's that same gas, but actually probably cleaner than what's coming out of that. So that's what happens on the AD side. The other material, as many of us, some of us compost in our backyard or whatnot, it becomes part of that compost recipe We mix it with wood waste, with green waste that we collect, and a portion of food waste. And we have our facility does about 200 ton a day on composting. But to Braden's point, we probably collect 500 to 700 ton a day from our various communities in green waste. If the food waste was not separated from the green waste, the food waste would literally contaminate the green waste, and the only thing I can do with that green waste at that point in time is make compost out of it. When I separate it and I have clean green waste, I can still make a mulch out of it that has high demand in many agricultural areas. So we want to keep that, because we really don't have anywhere here in Southern California the composting capacity to handle that much green waste on a daily basis. We can do 150, 200 ton a day per facility, but our main facility that Upland's material goes to, about 500 to 700 ton a day of just green. And yeah, that'll be a little too much to compost. So we try to keep it clean and then use as much green as we can, use the food waste. Great program.
Yeah, I think using a portion of that food waste in your compost is really important.
Oh, yeah.
There's no sense.
It's some beautiful compost at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I was concerned about the plastic waste too. So you do have a separation.
Yes, so it's a debagger, and they'll actually, which is, again, this is a state law.
Mm-hmm.
So they passed, many of us go to the grocery stores and they didn't want us using plastic bags, and if you want one now, you got to buy one or bring your own container. But now they passed this law that the only way that you separate your food waste is putting it in a plastic bag.
Mm-hmm.
And you could use a 2-gallon bag that you go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy, or you can use plastic, it was the old grocery bags that were a little lighter mill. They tie up. The ones they give you now are pretty heavy-duty plastic bags. Some people use discarded Ziploc bags. You can do that as well. We would prefer a clear bag, but we'll take any bag with food in it. We're of the mind that if it's a small bag in that batch, it's probably a food waste deposit.
Now, I have another question for you, because I've had many people ask me about, well, what goes in this bin and what goes in that bin? And I know there's a list, the city sends out a list and so forth. But understanding the process and seeing the process, best way to inform people as to what goes where.
Yes.
Because they know, oh, that bottle cap will be picked up by the magnetic separator, okay? And that sort of thing. Do you have a video that shows each of the individual stages?
Yes. Well, part of our education and outreach material that will be coming out, and I think just late today, I don't know if you were able to get it as part of the package. But it's just a brief overview of what we're going to do to start our educational process. But we're working through QR codes, and there'll be actually a different label that is on. It'll be a different label it'll show the icons of the food, but it'll also have a QR code on there that'll show you how to participate and what goes in where, as well as all the media that we send out. There'll be letters, newsletters, postcards, and then we hope to have multiple community meetings, maybe in a setting such as this, where we would invite the residents to come in, have all of the props that we would show as far as collecting the materials, and that same video and PowerPoint showing people how to do it. We have a residential program that we're moving forward with, and we also have a commercial program that's a little bit different. And a lot of our commercial outreach is usually through Chamber of Commerce and various service clubs, but we hope to have some commercial community meetings. However, my experience in the past is that while I will get residents that will show up to a community meeting, I don't get too many businesses that show up.
Yeah.
So we try to get through their business leadership in these various other organizations, and taking that information back to them. But we do send them equal amount of media so that they can at least know about it. We are diligent in putting forward, if your business, you want a waste assessment, we actually will send someone to your business to evaluate your waste stream, whether it's recyclables, trash, and organics.
So you have a video
Yes.
online. You can share the link and.
Yeah, when we don't have it completed yet for Upland, and I think Braden has something he wants to talk to you about.
Great.
Mike's going to hijack our meeting, so.
I'm sorry. So I can talk here for hours on this, but I think Braden has a lot more going on. So I'd be happy to come back at a time, and this is going to be kicking off on January 1st, and then we're going to have about 4 or 5 months of some intense community meetings and education. So we'll have plenty of time, hopefully, to answer those questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Michael. I know we're going to go back to the presentation now that staff was giving us. Thank you for that all the answers to all those questions. Oh, no, I could do the same thing. We have more questions, but we're waiting.
If you have more questions, like I said, this is a participatory thing. It's just on the outreach side of things. You know, when you're talking about videos, I'm saying, well, that was one of the things that we were going to present and all that stuff. So if you have questions related to 3 and 4 bins and what systems, I'm more than happy to turn it back over to Mike. But if you wanted to go start delving into the outreach, I'm trying to have a little bit left for us to talk about.
Just really quickly, so I did serve on Inland Empire Utilities Agency Board, yeah. And and at the last meeting, Environmental Sustainability Committee meeting, I couldn't remember why it didn't work. And I don't think it was Burtec, but it was a Burtec-related company that did a pilot project at the anaerobic digester. And I remember that one of the issues was air quality with the cogeneration engines. Wasn't there an air quality issue? And if so, do you see doing that? Because you talked about the process. Is there a possibility to do the anaerobic digestion and the cogen engine somewhere else?
At that facility, it was a partnership between another company and Burtec. We took over, as you know, the facility that was at IEUA, and they had 2 beautiful generators, but they were brand new but old. They hadn't been used, and big cat engines, and they needed to be refurbished, which we did. So it wasn't as much of an air quality issue with those particular generators. The biggest issue was that back about, 20 some odd years ago, your digesters were initially put into place to process the same kind of process, but instead of food waste, it was designed for the dairy manure. And it just didn't work. And actually, when we took those over, there was one that was still halfway full of that material. And it was a very antiquated system that we tried to convert, and it just wouldn't convert. And then we had some real issues with, there were water quality issues, discharge issues. Orange County got involved because it goes down some path. And all of the customers that were bringing material there were now no longer acceptable. Their material wasn't acceptable under these new regulations. So from that standpoint, it was just, you just kind of put you out of business.
So just short, you have hope that you could do it somewhere else.
Oh, yes.
Designed properly and it were brand new and you're not taking over the dairy digest.
Yes. So we already do. We use one that's been put in place by LA County San. We have the one in Rialto and one in San Bernardino. And then we're looking to build our own. But those are facilities we go to.
going back to staff.
Well, the whole intention was, I know that there was a question that was brought up, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave anything out there, as far as unanswered questions. So we wanted to add this in here to kind of help keep everyone informed about what was going on. So taking this information and knowing what direction we're going to go, when we start designing our outreach program, we really try to look at educating and changing behavior of the community. And so we asked our question, how we're going to do it, and what we tried to look at was how we would get the message out and what the message is. Okay, so Michelle's going to go over how we're going to go over how we're going to get the message out, as well as what the message is, and there's going to be a 2-slide presentation. Please ask as many questions as you want.
Thank you, Braden. Am I talking close enough? Okay, great. With any successful outreach program, we need to change behavior, and that's with a really solid message. And with that message, we have to really have a strong, how will we get the message out, and what is our message? So let's go over how will we get our message out. We broke it down to 3 phases. Per calorie cycle, we have major dates. Because of our phases, they're framed by these dates that are required. Our first phase will be our kickoff outreach program. That will be during right now until January 2020. Our first thing, we'll have our promotional pail that you'll see in front of us. I can pass it along if you like, thank you. The pail will be a one-time giveaway per household, and it will have a customized sticker with instructions, contact information, websites, and also our valuable QR code that will be linking to the informational instructional video. With the video, it's currently being under development with Burtech, and of course, somebody beat us to it, City of Laguna Niguel, and we would like to share that video to show you what our vision is with the video.
And just note that the promotional pail is a one-time promotion, just to kick off the meeting. So, mystery IT person, can you please put on the video?
Did you know that organic waste is anything made from plants or animals, including food waste and yard waste? Did you know that recycling organic materials is not only good for the planet, it's also the law? Every bit of organic material we can keep out of our landfills helps reduce harmful gases from being released into our environment. In 2022, state and local laws will require all households, including residents of apartments and homeowners associations, to recycle their organic waste. In 2019, the City of Laguna Niguel began collecting food waste from residential homes. Since then, single-family residents have been able to put their food waste in the same collection container as their yard waste. This is called your organics cart, and it gets picked up by the city's trash and recycling company, CR&R Environmental Services. Residents of apartments and homeowners associations with centralized trash service must also participate in this program. From your yard, single-family homes can recycle yard waste, such as grass clippings, leaves, branches, and wood waste. From the kitchen, all residents can recycle anything that is food waste, such as fruit and vegetable trimmings, eggshells, tea bags and coffee grounds, leftover food, rotten food, meat, bread, and even food-sold paper, such as napkins and paper towels. CR&R previously provided each household with a kitchen pail to collect your food waste. If you need a new pail, please call CR&R and they will deliver a new one to your home for a small fee. When your pail is full, empty it in your green organics cart outside. You can use your kitchen pail as is, or you can line it with a thin layer of newspaper, paper bags, paper towels or napkins, or a certified compostable bag. Look for this logo on the box. Non-biodegradable plastic bags, such as grocery bags, are not permitted. Please note, Although pet waste and kitty litter are organic materials, they must go into the trash. All other non-organic items are not accepted in this program, including plastic food wrap, cigarette butts or ashes, styrofoam, diapers, or any bathroom waste. Just keep using your green cart for yard waste, but for your convenience, you can now add your food waste to it. Minimize odors by making sure to drain excess liquids before putting your food waste into the kitchen pail, or whatever you choose to collect food waste in. You may find it helpful to store food scraps inside the fridge or freezer until collection day. Wash your kitchen pail with soapy water or place it in the dishwasher. To minimize odor with your outside organics cart, put in yard waste first, then food waste on top to help keep the bottom of the cart clean. You can also wash it by spraying it down with the hose on your lawn. In general, try to reduce food waste by only buying what you need, creating new meals from leftovers, and storing your food correctly. If you have excess shelf-stable food and would like to donate to a local food pantry, please visit the city's website for locations in the area. What happens to all this organic material after it gets collected? Your organic waste gets taken to an anaerobic digestion facility where it gets converted into renewable natural gas. This gas is then used as a low-carbon transportation fuel to power the collection vehicles, creating a closed-loop system. Any leftover organic waste after the renewable gas is extracted will be composted and used as a soil amendment for farming. Remember, hazardous waste such as batteries, light bulbs, paint, chemicals, sharps, electronic waste, and other such materials do not belong in any of your containers. You can contact CR&R customer service to pick up your household hazardous waste, or to sign up for organic service, order a new kitchen pail, replace your organics cart, or swap it for a different size. For more information, please check out the city's website. Thank you for doing your part to make the recycling program a success.
So I want to note, obviously, Laguna Niguel has a really great informative video, which when tied to a QR code on the bin, can really provide a lot of information to the public, right? Again, I want to note their program is very different than ours in that they have a bin that's constantly given out, and that adds cost to us. So we are in discussions with Vertec to just do a one-time promotional bin. And most likely we'll ask for additional bins in the future for event purposes, but it's not our intention to replace that bin. Secondly, as you can see in the video, they have it directly go to the waste where we're going to have it bagged. So it's a different system altogether. But I think that shows you a little bit on how we can really get a great message out there to really get proper compliance. So with that, I'm going to return to Michelle. Otherwise, I'm going to take over her meeting.
Thank you, Brayden. So with our videos and our pails, and that brings us to electrical media that will be based out of our social media platforms. We will have our target marketing in all the platforms, and of course in our city website. And of course, phone calls, phone numbers, websites, and resources will be on our website for more detailed questions that our residents may have. And of course, with a reliable source of outreach, another way to promote would be our traditional printing media. So we have some examples of what we've done so far. We have some newsletters, and also our Upland Today that goes into everyone's mailbox quarterly, and bill inserts. With electronic media and print media, we can actually move that to our other two phases of our outreach programs. And that will bring us to the new year on January 1st, 2020. We'll do our soft launch campaign, and that will be more kind of boots on the ground at actual presence at local city events, at local farmers markets, our lemon festival, We have a tree lighting ceremony coming up. And of course, we'll have an informational booth to keep the message going. And also, most importantly, at our local community organization events, like the Women's Club, Kiwanis Club, that will be also there will be some value and a lot of impressions being done at those local level organization meetings. That will be a 2-year process. So CalRecycle did give us 2 years to get the message out, get our reporting in order, and also get the bugs out, basically, in our program. So after 2 years, in 2024, that's when the penalties come in. And that's mostly the stick. So it's important that we start promoting that, hey, we're going to be penalized for those people that do not comply and sort properly. So with that, by then we'll have good data from Vertec, and we'll evaluate the data and actually look at the data and see what areas or what truck routes will have the least inspection. The least participation, low participation. And we can do direct marketing regarding door knocking or bill inserts to that certain neighborhood, or maybe just a door tag. Yes.
Have you guys thought about reaching out to the schools? Because kids are very effective at getting their parents to do things, especially if it involves saving the environment.
Yeah, we've thought about schools as well as church groups. I mean, I think those are big people in the community who really care about their community. We've seen a lot of church groups do volunteer work within our community. So, yeah, we thought about that. It kind of is covered in the local community organizations that we talked about, although we didn't bring them up as specific examples. But those are all in consideration, and hopefully we can get a partnership with the school districts.
I think I saw on the CalRecycle website, it was like San Marino or San Ramon, Northern California city. They had a children-specific video that talked about what goes in what. And that's something easy, just my background being a PTA president for 2 years and working with the schools. You can give them a video and they can let the teachers play it at their convenience. If it's like rainy day schedule, here's a video, whatever. And if the kids know what to do, then they're going to be the ones that are going to be like, Mom, Dad, you need to put this here.
I completely agree. We see the success in the messaging through just normal recycling in the Blue Pen. So children were a big factor telling their parents, hey, recycle. They're being recycle police officers almost to the parents. So
100%.
we'll definitely need their help when organics come to play. And we'll have special programs for them too. So with that, that will be
Michelle, I'm sorry, quick question. When I see the city website, now I know our city website is a work in progress. I would highly recommend a separate, to not have to go dig to find it, but when the QR code takes you to this page and the page is loaded with all that information, make it an actual resource instead of the way we currently do it.
Yes.
Just to make it a lot easier for those who have trouble navigating through that type of material.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to redesign the page, and also you guys, the committee, are going to be our guinea pigs. You're going to give us your feedback. And so that's going to be great value to us, see if it passes the test. So definitely.
And Michelle, you remember this when we worked on the census, but the HOAs, there are a number of HOAs in the city, and even a lot of the multifamily that are down by the freeway, a lot of those units, that whole block, I believe there were 3 HOA associations in there alone, of condos. So I think targeting HOAs is also a good way to get that message out.
Exactly. Multifamily is a great challenge, as Mike said. And that's going to be a specific, tailored campaign, because we basically have to work with their management and also a language barrier too. There might be a language barrier that we're not aware of, so we would have to translate some materials.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So our next question would be, what would our message it's going to be? Of course, it's broken down to 3 phases. And of course, we'll need your help tailoring our message. And it's going to be an effective message. Of course, it's so important to change that behavior and the mindset. So 2 big questions we're going to have from the general public would be, why are we recycling our food? And how are we going to do this? Definitely that's going to come out in the forefront. So that will be covered now until the end of the year. And then in 2022, we're going to continue that message and with plenty of avenues to get that message out and adding what are our penalties for not recycling. So definitely those 2 years, we're going to have the carrot and we're going to have the stick in the forefront nearby. So, and then after the 22, we're going to have 2 years, and then we have 2024, and that will be our penalty phase. So basically, Calorie Cycle will have us, if we choose to, do penalties. But of course, we'll work with the residents first.
I just want to point out, when we do the kickoff promotional side of it, we want to encourage. So that's the intent of the language that we're trying to be much more positive in that fact. When we get to the soft start portion of our outreach, we're trying to be informative, but also kind of warning of what might happen before. And then the penalty phase, we don't want to cause panic. So that's the reason why we have a question mark here, because there's going to be a fine balance. And maybe part of that outreach is not really just outreach, it's really penalties. Maybe the outreach is, here's your first warning, your second warning, and then a fee penalty. We can't act arbitrarily, but if we don't make our numbers, we definitely need to do something a little bit more extreme. And so our hope is we never have to get to that penalty stage, right? Go ahead.
So what is the answer that Upland is proposing for the why do we have to recycle organic food waste? Like, what is going to be the why that is going to be projected out?
Yeah, so obviously, I think what the video had shown is really what we're trying to show them is that it's law and that it is to help the environment, not only including landfill gases, but landfill volume. That's really going to be the why. And honestly, if you have a direction that you'd like to go, please help us with that message.
I was just going to say, I would probably go less on this is law and more on the benefits that it can provide, because I think naturally people might want to try to buck a law and just gripe about a law instead of understanding, like, there is a reason why this became a law. There is a reason why they're found benefit to do this. So if we educate people on how this is a benefit versus, well, this was given to us, so we're making the best of it. Bring people in as a partner and have a solution. Like, this is a solution to a problem. You can be a solution to a problem instead of, well, this got thrown on us and this is the best that we can do.
No, I appreciate that for sure. I had another video that was very long that went over Bangalore, India, showing how they had problems with basically trash collection and literally people throwing trash in the streets and kind of showing we don't want to get here type of messaging, which I think is what you're trying to get towards. Obviously, I don't want to hide the fact that it is a law and it is a requirement. I don't want the community to think that we're doing things arbitrarily, that there's a reason behind it. Not only that we're trying to look after the community and the environment, but also, we're partners with Cal Recycle and the state to make sure of a successful program. So as much as I appreciate it, I don't want to kind of disguise any of the effects. Or that.
Not disguising, I wouldn't say it's like, but I would just say in messaging, you're going to have your primary message and your secondary message, and I would have primary message be the benefit and the why that law was passed, and the secondary be the law.
Yeah, I agree, and that's definitely what we can do, and that's the type of kind of input that we'd need when we're trying to produce something. Now, we're going to try to produce something in partnership with Burtech, but if we can do something that's very Upland unique, that's definitely something we want to do, and we take that into consideration.
Great. I think I concluded my slide. We could advance to the next one.
Did anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, I have a real quick question, sort of a stupid question. What is the law again? It's 9 what?
Oh,
Since I'm 13.
it's SB 1383.
I gotta memorize that so I don't look stupid.
There's so many SBs that I couldn't keep them all track myself, so I do appreciate that one. Yeah.
I think that you're absolutely right. The education component to this is the positive. The stick part is going to come no matter what, but if we, at least in the beginning, focus on the value of what it is you're doing and creating a program that people are eager to participate in, it will help with, and Mike, I'm sure you understand this, with the issue in recycling called wish cycling, where people have their blue barrel and they go, oh, this is made out of plastic, even though it's a phone. Everything goes in there. No. But they're trying to fulfill that need of participation. Oh, I'm doing something right. But if we, since this is now going to be mandatory, if we can curb that behavior in the beginning, we won't have those problems as we move forward. And the outreach component is going to be, like, for the 2-year plan, it's going to have to be a consistent, every single day, that type of messaging has to be going out. So since this law affects everyone, and if you're a business, if you go to Hobby Lobby, if you go to any other city, any other business in the city, they also have requirements. You're going to be seeing at commercial businesses a set of organics bins out there. They're required to do bins as well. So if we can just make sure that the messaging that we're seeing at home and the messaging that when I go shopping, all of this plays together, then people, and plus whatever the state's going to do, don't know yet, but for advertising, but if we can play off that message and keep it just consistent, I think we'll have a successful program.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of, companies that kind of act proactively. I think in Costco is an example that they had a 3-bin barrel at most stores, right? So being proactive is great. And messaging, you have different messages to resonate with different people. Some people like the encouragement. Some people like the environment. Some want to have that salacious video that says, oh my God, you don't want to be this, right? Because I think at the end of the day, when you take a look at what California law was doing, they're trying to be, forerunners. They see what happens in Europe, what happened in New York, right? Where they had issues with trash out in the streets. Not a really environmentally inviting tourist location when you have, trash and vagrants and crime. So I think it's a very wise thing, but it's tailoring messages to each group more effectively. I don't want to browbeat anybody with it. Obviously, we just want to slowly get them to culturally change their behavior.
Yeah, well, I'd like to endorse that view. That the message is the key point, and you can do it this way. And by the way, it's the law. Put that in as a suffix. The other thing that I would like to reiterate is I think there's that Laguna Niguel video was great. Okay,
I copied our idea, by the way.
Yeah, but I would also like to say that if Burtech can produce the actual visual processing of following this through for the techies, the people that really get excited about how is this done? Kids love that kind of thing, And so I would like to hope that we would see that too. One more thing. Early feedback. When you get this going, you need to provide feedback in the first couple months about the results. We are not complying at this point. And you can do it frequently at the beginning and then maybe space it out later. But I think that early feedback is going to be critical.
For Burtech, I have gone to see their facility, and I was part of their tour, and thank you once again, that was a great tour. It is unbelievable, and I wish more people could see what a MRF does. Once the collection from your home is collected by those trucks, what happens to those? And the material going down the line, all those visuals would be so important, so helpful in any video that is. Right. What happens, what does a hose do to our machines? All those things, it's amazing. The whole process comes down because you put a hose, your entire reel of hose in there. So those little bits of information, obviously not just, that's separate, but one tailored for organics would be incredibly helpful. And I think that there's a tremendous synergy here where that we haven't really addressed from the benefits of the compost that can be created and the amount that the city is going to be required to accept or procure. Let me use the word procure, that's the word. But we're in a drought. You have being able to amend soil so it retains moisture. If you're going to do any kind of large or small landscape projects, incorporating that into your soil, if you insist on having grass, if you're able to, if you're going to go through the process of it, get the compost, use the compost, you're going to notice a tremendous amount of water that you'll be saving because you'll be watering a lot less. Those types of messages bouncing off one another, I think would produce a successful project for everybody.
Yeah, I think there's challenges because, as these programs become statewide and large cities start producing it, there's going to be questions on the road. Well, who's going to take all our mulch? Who's going to take all our compost? I think there's a struggle right now, even for the mulch, to be able to give it away free to other cities. It's hard to get everyone to have it. And as the drought comes along, and honestly, you never know. One day we might have a no lawn system. So what are you going to do with the mulch there? Maybe all mulch, no lawn landscaping. You never know how it's going to be. So there's always challenges that we're going to have to work through together, and this program's going to evolve for sure. Yeah.
Mike, would you be open to a tour for the committee?
We can definitely arrange a special meeting to have a tour for the committee members, for sure.
Just because we're on the topic, for procurement of compost and mulch and tonnage, I saw on the graph that was provided, Upland's population, which is roughly 80,000, it shows the amount of tonnage that would be needed to be procured in order to meet the requirements. So Upland's tonnage, I think I did the math right, turns out to 3,712 tons. That's a lot of compost. And my question is, the storage, Mike, not just for Upland, but for all your cities, you can do compost giveaways, you can do all these different programs, but you're still not you're not making a dent on what you're going to be collecting.
And you won't. And we've had that conversation with Cal Recycle because that that formula doesn't.
Did it make sense to me?
You couldn't absorb a quarter of that much mulch, but hopefully they'll get to the point of good faith efforts as well as they did with 939 and whatnot. I think mulch and compost needs to be a significant part of your procurement program, but there's just for all the cities, even the larger ones, it's just massive. And so you use the mulch, you try to incorporate it into any city projects for sure, landscape medians. if you are permitting certain contractors and developers, make it a requirement that they use a mulch or they use a compost at some level of their development, whether it's commercial or residential. And then residential giveaways and whatnot. But you're right, James. We've had giveaways before. You can't give away that much mulch. It's just a lot. But we'll make a valiant effort towards that. But there's not a city in California that will reach those numbers.
And what about for your facility, the backlog? And the backlog, what I mean is, because it takes compost from the time you collect it until the time it can be delivered to a city.
Right.
That's a certain number of days. And if you're, on Vertex part, if you're not able to deliver, or not deliver, but to get sell the compost or give the compost away at a rate fast enough that you're producing it. And when it gets to a city, the city has rules that, the compost can't be brought to a city yard and put on the floor.
Right.
It has to be in an enclosed container with covered as well. That you're going to have a backlog of no square footage just to protect, because of water runoff from the materials in there. I know you're not Cal Recycle, but some things I just don't think were thought out all the way.
We do that now at City Yard, and we deliver roll-off boxes full of mulch.
But you're going to want those back.
Yeah. Oh, they will. But some of them are there permanently, believe it or not. And I don't know if you allow residents to go back there and get. Okay. So the city already incorporates some of that, but again, not to those quantities. And as Braden mentioned, this whole program is starting off, but it has to evolve. And Cal Recycle is going to have their hands full just monitoring this, trying to monitor this. But the one thing that they want to make sure of is that, which the city is already well on its way, that you have an ordinance, that you amend any agreement that you need to do, and that you have put a program into play as soon as it's close to the January 1 date. So I think we have a lot of the pieces, but at the end of the day, and I do appreciate the conversation about making it more of just an obligation to your community and to the environment, why we want to do these things, because it is, we have a greenhouse gas issue, and this is all, tailoring back to the greenhouse gas problem that is created by landfills, getting all of the organics deposited in the landfill and creating that methane gas that just goes into the atmosphere and creates those greenhouse gas issues. But at the end of the day, you are going to have that, because this is where it'll come in. There are going to be significant adjustments in rate to cover these processes. And so that, they're going to say, well, yeah, that's all well and good. I want to be a good environmentalist, but I don't want to be charged.
Right.
Well, it's the law. We have to do this, and there are costs associated with it. And that's where where you're going to need a little more of a push. But we'll be crossing that road sooner than later, and hopefully be able to answer those questions.
Are you anticipating, if the process is proposed goes well, the quality of material that you'll be able to sell off in the blue bin should be cleaner if this works? Because instead of you getting, not so much, putting wet food into the black bin or putting wet food, especially into the blue bin, contaminates the blue bin, and it gives you a lower grade quality material that you can.
What they're doing with the wet food right now is putting it in the black bin.
Right.
So what the ask is to take it from the black bin, bag it up, instead of putting it in the black bin, bag it up and put it in your green bin. If you have excess cardboard or food containers, they can go in the blue bin. But hopefully, to your point, I think the point you're trying to make is that you pull the food out of the black bin pounds per container go down.
Right.
While the food waste container costs go up and the processing costs go up. But there are some avoided disposal costs that get offset. At the end of the day, it's still part of the entire waste generation. You may have less refuse that's going to the landfill, but you have more material going to the green waste, organic processing.
And with the system that Upland uses, if people utilize and do the program properly, you can start to reduce your size of the black bin with the current, and you can save money by doing this, right?
Yeah, Upland is one city that does have that option. There are, for example, Rancho Cucamonga has one size, 95-gallon trash barrel. Upland has a 95, a 65, and I believe a 35 as well that they can utilize for trash disposal. So by reducing that waste stream, depends how much food that really is filling that in. That might be enough to drop a size.
Back to messaging and the Saturday pickups for Upland residents for composting. I know, like when I was talking to a lot of Upland residents about this program and about the composting, a lot of them don't know that that's available to them. And so I would say that that might be something key to put into this messaging, that like by participating in the composting program, you get something back too. And what that benefit is to their own houses, like to put that in their yards and as James said, help cut down on watering and stuff like that. So I would highlight the Saturday pickup of compost as part of this program as well, to make sure residents know that they can take part of that.
We have a very popular household hazardous waste program, and we get a lot of people through this program. When COVID hit, it suspended it, and it impacted surrounding agencies' household hazardous waste program. And when we brought it back, it was like gangbusters. Everyone wanted to be participating on it. And so we do show people that there is compost available. Sometimes it's what people want. We have two sizes of compost. I believe it's 1/2 inch and 1 inch. We used to have 1/2 inch and 2 inch, and people complain, mulch. And people complained that the 2 inch was too big, so we dropped it down to the 1 inch size. So it's a fairly active program. So I guess we could definitely advertise that more or reemphasize that within this, that as the program develops, if we can get compost, we might have a third pile that has compost, and we might have that part of our video or social media outreach as well.
Just to piggyback off that, since the city does have council districts, perhaps when Burtec and the city come together to conduct community meetings, having those community meetings, one for each district, to try to cover as many people, you'll get, I think, a better turnout than if you were to have one general citywide meeting. But also even having, to try to get rid of some of this mulch and compost, has the city considered advertising a weekend day like you at Sierra Vista Park, where you drop off 2 roll-offs and people can come and collect whatever they'd like, and then whatever, come Monday morning, Burtec can come by and pick that up. That way they're not just going at the city yard, but you have it at several locations throughout the city for an entire weekend to try to move some of this stuff away and out for people to use. It's an idea.
It's definitely something to consider.
Oh, I've partaken of the mulch from time to time, but I don't have a vehicle that really is amenable to moving much. So I put a couple trash cans in the back, and I leave the back hatch open and so forth, and it just isn't very efficient. I would be absolutely excited to get a whole truckload of that stuff. And I think there are a lot of other people that would too. I mean, I'm on an alluvial fan. There is no soil. There's no soil, okay? And to build a good soil base for gardening and so forth, it takes a lot of mulch. And when compost comes, depending on how clean it is and what the elemental composition is, I would welcome that for sure.
Unfortunately, we don't have a grub hub or a compost hub that we can have something delivered. It would probably add quite a bit of cost to it, but obviously you never know, down the road what is possible.
Yeah, well, and a collaborative effort, with some environmental group or a gardening group. If you have a gardening group, that they can get together and rent a pickup for a weekend and make deliveries to their members.
Can customers buy directly from Burtec? Or just perhaps pay for the cost of transportation? Yeah.
I mean, I think I don't want to say never, ever, right? There's something to be said about doing a pilot program to see like compost at a park or something like that, to be considered to be a little bit more local to everybody. But, I really want to vet this out because I don't want to leave stinky material, compost or, mulch somewhere that becomes an eyesore when we get complaints with that as well. So, it's something that we have to think through if we want to do a pilot program to see if this would be something that would be beneficial to the committee. Like I said, I don't want to say no to anything. I just want to kind of think through it before. You're bringing up too many good ideas for us to consider. Yeah, more work. Okay, so what I kind of want to go over is some of the timelines. Although we haven't presented here to this group the residential organics recycling ordinance update that we had. We did present this to the Public Works Committee already, and we will be taking our first reading to council on the 25th. We're going to do any change to ordinance requires 2 readings, so we'll do a second reading on the November 8th. On top of that, we've been in discussions with Burtec about having an MOU to kind of defer solid waste rates for organic residential recycling. The reason why is because you can see on here, I don't have an addendum to address organic recycling. We're working on it. We have lawyers working on it right now. And then with the new city manager, we're going to have discussions about if there's anything that we want to add to the agreement to make it stronger. We're thinking about making, instead of addendum, a restated agreement altogether. That being said, we know that it might not happen by January 1st, so we wanted to get some type of agreement with Burtec to make sure that any costs associated with this program that starts on January 1st is accounted for by July 1st, which is when we intend to have new solid waste rates. We do plan to have a public hearing for solid waste rate adjustments by March, hopefully, okay? But that's also predicated that we also have an agreement finalized by that time. So this is just a tentative schedule of what we're looking at in order to meet compliance with AB 1383, and also to show you that there's a lot of work to be done. Now, that being said, from now to January 1st, our kickoff outreach is a very short time. So we're trying to pull together as much of this as possible. We did hand out some of our print media, and not to give you homework, but if you so choose, please take a look at that. If you have comments or like to add suggestions or some additional wording to it, we're more than happy to take it into consideration. I think that's the intent of it, is to really get you guys involved with participating in some of this stuff and it's up to you how much you want to participate for sure. When we do get a video out, a draft video, my hopes is possibly having a special meeting to go over that video. Maybe we have a special meeting to go over the video and maybe go out to the transfer station. Although with winter coming up, I'd prefer to wait till I have guaranteed sunny days to go over there. But that's kind of tentative in our mind. We know it's a very short time frame, and so we apologize for not giving you more substantial things to look at. But I think you can see the direction that we're going in. With that, I'll be happy, and all our staff will be happy to take any questions.
I think once the development of the actual program specific brochure, I'll just feel like a better term, the word brochure, for this program is created, including that program, the specifics as well as the implementation of the requirements to comply and what happens if you don't comply, and explaining to everybody once it's developed, warning 1, warning 2, warning 3, or however it's going to work. Putting all of that information together when that is delivered, when the bucket is delivered, being able to incorporate that in there, so you're not having to save money on a mailing, but if all that, it's going to be labor intensive, I understand that, but if it can be printed as the package itself, as this is the package, include that in the bin delivery, in the bucket delivery, I'm sorry, that will greatly help. And the labeling, I saw the label on there. Miss Upland will develop its own label, one with bigger font. And whatever that label should also, as the program continues to evolve, should mirror the labeling that'll be done on the bin, on the residential barrels and the commercial bins, just to make them all look the same. That constant visual reminder, no matter where anybody looks, is really helpful to reinforce that program messaging, I think.
Yeah, I think that's, our intention was always to add a brochure, to have a Upland unique sticker that had the QR code so that it could go to the direct link of the video. So that was always the intention of the Pale. Because it's a one-time deal, obviously we didn't really think about kind of labeling it this way or the other, because we really just want to get that message out. That was the full intent of it. But since Mike's up, I'll let him speak to that.
A quick comment, James, to your point. And while Upland's Pale delivery, we can be a little more tailored to the city. On our bins and barrels, if you're, and I know you're familiar with Cal Recycle's labeling requirements. So when we put an order in for barrels, they're all going to be to Cal Recycle spec.
Got it.
And so we can't, so then when we want to exchange a barrel or whatever else, if we don't have Upland barrels, then we're delivering someone else's barrel. So this will all have the same generic, if you will, information. But our little pails here can have a more customized per Upland, and that's why I'm saying the QR code and whatever else.
Mike, in the staff packet is included, Burtech has a plan for SB 1383 compliance. I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
There was, okay, it looks like this. This page, it's regarding the Regional Food Rescue Resource Map. The map shows districts 1 through 9, and it says example of Region 7 edible food recovery program. Region 7 would be looks like far western San Bernardino County. Do you have one for Region 5? Or is that to be designed
That was
still?
just an example. We would have the our entire area, and we have a couple of options on that we can assist the city with. So it will, I think you'll be quite happy with it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Does anybody else have any questions?
When does this need to be done by? Because I have some comments that I'd like to submit for your guys' consideration.
So the one you are questioning is the fall issue of Upland Today. Winter, sorry, misspoke. We just submitted our comments for the second reading. I believe it was last week or the week before. So is there any major comments you have, or maybe I could catch it?
Just going off what we discussed earlier, to help the messaging be more focused on the benefit of the law and not the law itself. So having the sentence landfill organic waste decomposes and generates, having that be the first, like leading that off to describe the why.
Okay.
And then saying to help reduce this harmful emissions, California passed instead of California is implementing. California passed an organic waste recycling law. I think that just helps kind of frame it more in what we were kind of talking about.
Will do. I'll try to catch it.
Was there a date you wanted info by the way?
The sooner the better.
The sooner the better.
Obviously, with timeframes that is already submitted, so we'll try to incorporate what's talked here today, but if you can get us, we'll also try to get it added.
Are there any more questions or comments? Well,
Just in conclusion, I hope this was informative. Obviously, that's the intention to do any presentation that we bring forth to the committee.
I just want to thank staff for putting this together and Burtek for being here. This was a lot of information, and I know this is an enormous undertaking.